guys, it's Brodie Kern, and I'm here in the REC experience.
Thanks, buddy. That was sick. Oh, wow. Thank you. Really, Brodie. Like, for you to share that much it was one of the first times I went that deep with somebody. So I really, really appreciate that, dude.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's why I do it.
Hey. Thanks for being in the REC experience. I'm your host, Jas Takhar, with your girl, Laura, Alto, Stewart.
Hey, Jazzy, what's up?
I'm good, girl. How you been?
I'm fabulous.
So excited for our viewers and listeners to see this episode. Drug addict to entrepreneur to millionaire, owns 4 businesses. Mr. Brodie Kern.
What an interesting story, eh?
Just like, I loved his passion from the second I met him on Instagram. Just like, he spoke right through the phone, like just so much energy. And I sent you a text and I was like, Laura, we gotta connect with this guy. Let's get him on.
And I'm so glad we did, because this is somebody who's had such a tumultuous past and he has turned it into something so wonderful. And it just oozes out of him now, just his zest for life.
And now he's inspiring so many people. And he has, like I mentioned, 4 businesses that he's running. And he spoke about what he does on a daily basis, like first thing in the morning, what he does to change his state physically and mentally, and even spiritually, because he does a lot of meditation as well. But he really walked us through the steps he takes, to stay sober.
Well, he said it a few times. It's really one day at a time. I know we asked him at the very end, how long have you been sober? And it's not that he's super proud of the amount of time it's been, because really he knows at any given point, any given day, he could fall back off the wagon. So he just takes it one step at a time.
He even made mention to that, right? There's a point where he did go back.
Yes. He said, I thought I could have just one drink.
Yeah. And he figured that just he couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, it's so inspiring to see now how many people he's helping. His story is phenomenal.
Well, and even if you don't have a story like that, because it's obviously not something everybody has in common, but what we do all have in common is certain different vices that we use to tackle our own demons. And so I think it can relate with a lot of viewers and listeners from just a sort of basic fundamental level.
And it's not like addiction in itself is not, in my opinion, it's not just drugs, right? Like it could be alcohol, it could be a lot of different things that a lot of different people go through. But to see someone kind of get through it and get on the other side of the mountain.
Now married with a kid.
Yeah. And so if you haven't seen his Instagram, go check him out right after you listen to this episode. Alto, as always, appreciate your time. Thank you. And to you, the viewer and the listener, I know there's a lot of you watching, a lot of you listening, but you yet have not told your friends that this is the best podcast of all time. Tell them. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Enjoy the show.
Awesome.
I did it.
You did it.
REC Experience presents Real Estate, Entrepreneurship, Leadership with your host, Jas Takhar. The REC Experience podcast is now on air.
So excited to have our guest today. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but a really quick backstory on him. More importantly, how I came across him, just going through Instagram and going through social, and came across this profile and said, you know what, I'm going to reach out to him. It's going to be somewhat far-fetched because in the Eastern time zone, it was late at night where I do kind of my research, but luckily he's on the West Coast, and we connected really through your Instagram profile, Brodie. And so I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and we'll get right into it. So who are you? What do you do? And kind of what's your specialty, my man?
Yeah, dude, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate you having me on. Just in seeing your setup and your team and stuff, I'm a little bit more excited about this than I am. I do a lot of podcasts, right? And so you never know when something pops up on my calendar. I never know what I'm stepping myself into. Some of them you go on there and you're like, man, like, how did this happen? Like, what have I done here?
What did I put myself for? Why did I do this?
You're talking and you're like, nobody's listening. So it's nice to be on a show that's doing it right. A little bit of backstory on me, man. There's a lot to unpack. I'm about to be 26 years old, serial entrepreneur. I've, grown 4 businesses over the last 5 years. I'm a recovering alcoholic, recovering addict. I dropped out of college to go to rehab when I was 21. I'm a husband. I'm a new father. I have a 7-month-old son at home.
That's awesome.
Dude, I'm just a guy who's been through a lot of self-induced pain, who wants to be part of the global conversation because I think it matters. I don't fucking, obviously I love to make money. I love to grow businesses, and we'll talk about my businesses. But I just love to talk, man. And I want to be part of what matters because, my conditioning my entire life, everything that I ever heard, it just got me in a really bad spot. And I want to help a lot of people get in a less bad spot.
Now, Brodie, you mentioned it, recovering alcoholic, recovering drug addict. Your Instagram profile said drug addict to CEO. So we're going to talk about the CEO stuff. And I know you're okay with sharing it because you put it out there so much. And thank you for that, because I know there's hundreds, if not thousands of people listening and watching who are probably going through the same shit, right? And they're either scared or really just worried, or even maybe going down a spiral that you maybe were close to going. How bad did it get, man?
So the year that I was 21, I overdosed 6 times, three of which were 3 days in a row at the end of my run. And finally, out of a point of desperation, I checked myself into a rehab facility and started to gain some clarity. I found the program of AA, and in the things that I learned in these crazy this book of AA that just is full of shit that I didn't want to hear. I found a toolkit for dealing with life, and it allowed. And then I had all this alcoholic energy that I didn't know what to do with, and I became obsessed with self-development. Now, before we move on, there's something that I want to talk about. You mentioned that I'm open about talking about stuff. And I just did an Instagram live for about an hour, so I'm real warmed up. We're really in the zone. But I was talking about the idea of being powerless. And this is something that I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Like the first step in AA is admitted that I was powerless over alcohol, and I was. And there's been a ton of things that I've been powerless over in my life, and this idea of showing up powerfully in the world, whether that's how people project, say that or not, that's what they want. And so for me, I want to show up powerfully as an entrepreneur. I want to show up powerfully on this podcast for your audience. I want to show up powerfully as a husband, as a father. And in order to show up powerfully, I cannot be powerless over certain things in situations that people are not okay with sharing with other people. So my gift to the world has always been ruthless transparency, because
transparency, I love that word. Okay.
Because if I am not willing to share my past, my darkest shit with the world, that means it has power over me. But whenever I'm able to share that with another human being, I claim my power there. And so I like to say that transformation happens in the transparency. And so if there's something that someone has that they struggle to face in their past, whatever, when you share that, when you're vulnerable about that, that's where growth happens. And the interesting thing is, if you don't there's this thing, I can't remember who told me this, but if you do not want to repeat the past, you must complete the past. And so what that means is you have to face all that shit, everything that has led you up until this point. You got to face that shit with no judgment. You have to accept it. Acceptance is one of the most powerful words in the human language, and you have to move forward. And that's what I do.
And is this like a morning ritual you go through? How do you get yourself right into that state and changing that state essentially?
So it is done through a lot of deep work. And for a long time, it was part of my morning ritual, and still gratitude is a big part of my morning ritual. But, it has evolved for me into a state of being. And that happened over time, right? And then so it comes down by putting in the reps, by putting in the actions, by really, digging up my past, sharing it, talking about shit that nobody wants to talk about and nobody wants to look at from their past because it's uncomfortable, it's real, it's raw, it's relevant, and it's scary ultimately. And that's why most people do it, right? And then so for me, a big thing for me is I everything that I teach all my guys that I work with, and a big thing that I'm about is just stop fucking lying. we all have that shit that we hide. Like, don't fucking lie. Like, don't stop hiding shit and your life will get better, right? But if you hide that shit, like everybody has their form of sedation, drugs, alcohol, women, porn, whatever. I speak largely to men. So, keep that in context, right? But like drugs, alcohol, women, porn, like cigarettes, like everybody has their form of sedation and it all has power over them.
I want you to take us back, if you don't mind, Brodie. How did you get involved so much into the alcohol and like the drugs? Was it because it was surrounded around you? Like, was it just the people that you were hanging with? How did that kind of all come about?
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that go into this. A lot of genetics. Everyone in my family, with the exception of my father, is an addict or an alcoholic, and none of them have ever gotten sober. So I had the inclination. And then on top of that, I grew up, my parents were very young when they had me. They were never together. My father was a very stable person. My mother's an alcoholic. And so there was a lot of this confusing contrast when I was growing up, like childhood development and how that shows up in later life really fascinates me, because I had to go so far back to deal with some of the shit that I've had to deal with. But the contrast of that, and then so I started to develop these insecurities based on, I had pinned it in my mind as a child that if I was better, my mom would drink less, and she was an alcoholic. So now I know that nothing I could have ever done could have changed it. Right. But I had built that up in my head. And so and then I also got very good at, so there was this resistance there. Right. But I was this kid who was an extrovert. I was, I hung out with cool people. I was good at sports. On the outside, it looked like everything should be cool, right? But this internal resistance was there of me not being enough. And it started to grow whenever I was in high school and then whenever I went to college, because when you live inauthentically, right, I was acting as if this person who was super confident and felt all these ways and, just continued to dive into that, while in reality, that's not who I was internally. The darkness and the fucking stress expands. And because of that, I literally could not stand to be sober. I had to sedate. And on top of all of that, I knew very young that I was going to be an alcoholic. And I loved drinking and doing drugs, like more than anyone on the planet.
Well, it changed your state, right? So you either can use external forces.
Yeah, I was invincible, dude.
Or the negative, right?
Yeah. And that was the thing. Like I could drink and I could do a lot of cocaine, and none of that shit that happened when I was sober came up in my mind. And I could go to, and I'm an extrovert who needs a lot of stimulation, and I could go to areas, the bar, parties, all this stuff where there was so much stimulation that I didn't have to be alone with my thoughts. That was ultimately my fear, is I was afraid of being alone with my own thoughts.
And then I take it that the longer that you were into the alcohol and into the drugs, it kept away those external forces, and you weren't in your thoughts that long by yourself.
Yeah, never. I mean, because the progression that most addicts and alcoholics take over 20, 30 years, I did in 5. I was like, by the time I was 20, if I didn't drink in the morning, I had the shakes.
Right.
And my hands would shake. And that's shit you only see in old alcoholics.
That's nuts, right? To go through that all morning, all afternoon, all evening. Now you go into AA and you mentioned self-development. What's some other tools you used?
So, I show up in rehab in a point of desperation, and they're teaching AA in this 12-step program. But I went to a 28-day inpatient treatment facility where I had no phone. I had nothing. I was just on the lockdown. Okay. And all I could do, it was the middle of nowhere, Missouri. I live in Missouri. And so it was the middle of nowhere, Missouri. It was hot as fuck. And literally all I could do, I would come outside to smoke cigarettes. I smoked a lot of cigarettes at that point. And I would come outside to smoke cigarettes, and then I would go back inside, and they had a library, right, with a ton of self-development books. And so there I read Think and Grow Rich. I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I was just doing anything I could, because if I was doing something, my brain wasn't necessarily thinking about drinking a lot.
Did you ever pick up these books ever before? Or no, never, not even as a teenager? Did you get into any of?
Nothing.
Okay, continue.
Nothing. Like I had never, dude, by that point I had pretty much accepted, like I was that real entitled kid who just had a very skewed view of what life was going to be like, right? Like I was just going to go to college and party and I was going to get this job that paid me a lot of money and it was all going to be super fucking easy and I deserve, like it's some stupid shit. And so then I got this, this wake up call. And then what happened is that was like when I was like 18. By the time I was 19 or 20, I had pretty much accepted that I was probably going to die from substance abuse. And I was okay with that. That was the interesting. I was okay with that. I was okay with going out that way.
Fuck, at 20, man, like that's so scary to hear. Like at 20 years, like, and I know you know it now because the amount of people you talk to, but at the age of 20 to think, this is going to be my life. I'm good with it, kind of, man. So like, kudos to you, the amount of transformation you made. Go on.
It just gives me the chills. I just got the chills thinking about it. I mean,
I'm getting chills listening to you, man.
it sucks, dude, because 20, like, those, I would not go back and okay. So like I say that I have had a ton of experiences that were fun and all shaped me, but like, dude, I would never want to be 20 again, whether I was an addict or not. You know what I mean? That's just, there's a lot of pressure there. And it's not till you get, I don't want to say not till you get older, but it's not till you have more experiences that you're like, damn, like this shit just doesn't matter that much. Like everything is what it is and it's going to be fine if you just have that mindset. And stop, like I say all the time and people don't really understand what I'm saying, but I'm just like, nothing matters. Nothing fucking matters. Like I could lose, and I say this because I've experienced it, like I could lose everything and it's fine. Because you know what? The next logical step is to just pick back up and try again.
That's it.
Like if you can, because all of life is just minor and major trauma, right? Like, doesn't matter if it's fucking someone looked at you the wrong way. That's minor trauma. There needs to be a minor grieving process, whatever, right? Then you have major, like it's all about grieving. If you can skip the grieving and just pick back up again, like that's life. That's rapid acceleration of success. Is like, fuck the trauma, just get up.
You said it's quick. Like what I always like to talk about is that time that you have to respond to the minor or the major. If you can just, decrease the amount of time, right, where you can make that shift and that transformation that you made mention to so many times now.
Yeah, and that's it, dude. Like, look, let's say some really bad shit happens in my life, right? I could, what most people would do is sit around, fucking feel sorry for yourself for 6-7 months, pick up and try again, right? It's just the cycle of life. Shit is always going to happen. And what if you just picked up again tomorrow? Said, fuck the 6 months of, it's like you would just, you're condensing time of everything. Like, and we all have and it's easy for us to say that, harder to do it. But then, if you at least roll with that mindset, like, so you asked me earlier about tools other than self-development books, like meditation is a tool that has changed my life because it has taught me how to be present in all areas. So like, let's say some bad shit does go down. I can get caught up in emotion and fuck it. Make like that. It'll be 6 months later. And I look back and I'm like, fuck, I've been just crying for 6 months. Right. But if I'm very present, presence creates space to think, slows down time. If you're present, you can say, wow, I have the option right now to bitch for 6 months, or I have the option to get back up. Or maybe the emotions take you for a day and then, your presence comes in and you're like, oh, I jumped on the wrong side of the fucking court. Like I'm on the negative side, right? And you get over on the positive side.
Now, you've been reading Think and Grow Rich. I'm taking you back to the library now.
Sure.
Think and Grow Rich, as well as Dale Carnegie's How to Influence and Win Friends. Is there more now that you're reading, and are you starting to actually make use of these books, or are you just like really just consuming them at this point?
Well, so what was happening is, like I read probably 15 or 16 books but then I was spending the majority of my time reading the big book of AA, right? Okay. Just the book. My only goal at that point was do not drink today. Wow. Right? I had no, there was no ambition. Like, sure, I, thought like, man, it'd be nice to have a cool life or whatever. But like the only focus, like if I thought about any of that, I would end up drunk. And so like,
you're taking it day by day at this point.
Though they have this cliche saying in AA, one day at a time.
Okay.
And so, and so I'll tell you a story. I was in rehab and I went to my first I went to my first AA meeting. And, when you get different lengths of sobriety, you pick up these sobriety chips. And there was a guy who was picking up a chip for 32 years sober. And I came back to the treatment facility and I cried my eyes out. I thought, holy fuck, I could never stay sober for 32 years, right? Like, how the fuck am I going to do that? And I just panic attack after panic attack after panic attack. And someone came up to me and they're like, dude, you don't have to do that. Like, you just have to stay sober for today. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I mean, this is night. I'm fucking chaining cigarettes out there, like crying, like fucking look like a mess. And he's like, bro, there's like 2 hours until you go to bed. Like, I'll just sit here with you. Can we do that? And I'm like, yeah. And then, you wake up the next morning and things aren't as bad as they were. And then it's always today. And so like, I've applied this principle to my entire life. I'm notorious for saying, fuck goal setting. Like, and don't get me wrong, I set goals. But I think that the only purpose of setting goals is to reverse engineer daily tasks. Like if I was to ask you, hey, can you give it 110% for the next year? It's like, dude, I don't know. My dog may die. It's fucking, I may get a car wreck. Like, you never know. But like, if you're like, hey, can you just go all in for today? Fuck yeah.
Brodie, I've had 60, 70 interviews that I've done for the podcast. I've never had somebody break it down right to the day. I love it because a lot of my viewers and listeners know one of my business partners. There's three of us. He passed away 2 years ago. He was the face. He's been sitting here doing this podcast with you. He was my mentor. Passed away we did not expect it. Just came. It was quite tragic, and I had someone tell me just take it day by day.
You got to break it down to something that's manageable.
Right. Now, so at what point did you start thinking, I'm going to be able to open some businesses? Like, when did that shift happen?
So here's what happened. Whenever I went to rehab, I was working at this little pizza place, serving tables, trying to get some money, and just enough to get loaded, right? Minimal money. Just I think I made like $8,000 that year. And
well, better than just drinking and doing drugs. So that's awesome, right? One step.
Well, I had to buy the drugs and buy the alcohol. Yeah. And so, $8,000, like that could get me some $4 vodka. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so like I was a dirty alcoholic. Like I just drank shit. Like there was nothing flat. Like there was nothing sexy about my life as a partier. Like it was real.
Okay.
And so, I got out and I went back to that place because the owner of that place was actually also sober. So I'm so grateful to this day for them giving me my job back because that allowed me to kind of get on my feet. But then I was still serving tables, and it was funny because once I was sober, they made me a manager, and then I started I was like, oh, this is like how a business runs, this shit. And I was like, we need to do things this way. And they're like, nah, we just do things the old way. And I'm like, fuck, like I'm starting to at least take some level of ownership, even though it was small. Like it was this pizza place, and it was just I started to go to the gym again, but I was taking a bunch of ownership of everything in my life. And so there was a lesson to be learned there. But as far as a real job, I had never entertained the idea of starting a business. That was never in the picture. I had just learned that I wasn't going to die at 21. So then now every day was a huge win. Every day was a new experience. I fucking did better than I did yesterday. Sick. I'm alive. And so then, I did kind of start thinking about getting a job, and it hit me that well, dude, I'm college dropout junkie, and everybody knows it. I'm never going to get a job. And I had this buddy who was a couple years older than me. And he's like, dude, there's an incredibly low barrier to entry to real estate. And so I took a class, passed a test. And then, at that point I had already been studying a lot of sales. I was listening to a bunch of Grant Cardone. I used to vibe with GC super hard. Now I listen to a lot more spiritual content, but GC was good for that point in my life. I needed him. And, so then what happened is I took all that alcoholic energy. I took that need to do shit. And I started selling houses. In my first 8 months in real estate, I sold 46 homes.
Wow.
It was interesting.
And was that just through meeting a lot of people? Because a lot of my listeners are realtors as well, so we can mix.
Dude, I was slaying phones. That was it. That was it. Like, I remember, like, and still to this day, like, where I operate best on the phone is like, if you ask me what my ideal cold calling environment would be for any business, I would be like, lock me in a closet with no windows and nothing on the wall. Like, I just need a dry, like, dirty as fuck, like a garage. Like, I'll make millions from the garage. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it just feels, you're like, fuck, this place really sucks. I need to make some money. And so, like, I had this, like, shitty apartment. I got this dog I still have him. He's my man, but I got this dog a couple days that after I got out of rehab, and I never took him out of my apartment. He just pissed all over my floor. And so I was just in this like piss smelled place all the time, calling, like practicing my scripts on my dog. Like, it would just be like me speaking to my dog, like really narrowing down my skills.
I love it.
And dude,
seriously though, right? Practicing scripts is something you need to do.
Well, that was the thing. I just didn't want to miss opportunities. I would be on the phone and like my skills weren't like, and so I've always been really good at like, it's since I got sober and learning about myself and introspection, I've always really been good at the reflection process. So like after each call or after a session of calls, it's like in the recordings, it's like where I had dialers, you know, I had the gear, and it was like, so where could I have done better? And I was starting to really dissect everything. It's like, oh, I could have done better here, but I can't do that unless I know the situation. So I'm going to practice every single thing. Like, there's only real estate, it doesn't matter what product or service there is, there's only a finite number of objections that you can have, right? That you can deal with. There's only so much shit people could say. It's very hard to throw a curveball into something if you're prepared. So then you just understand how to manage that situation and manage the person. And I've always been able to talk and read people and understand that, but I just really started to hone in on those skills. I started becoming a salesperson.
Okay. No, and I can tell, man, just the energy that you have, it's so transferable into really any business or anything.
Well, dude,
that you come, it's infectious, right? Like, I want to keep on talking to you because I'm feeding off of this energy. You make it very easy. Any prospect on the other line or when you meet them face to face to show a home or whatever it is, they're gonna feel that. You feel better after you speak with Brodie. Like, I watch one of your videos, I just feel better. Like, it might not be for the whole day, but it's literally, I get off that feed, I just feel a little bit better because of the energy you bring.
Well, that's good, and I appreciate that. And that goes for anyone. Like, if you're listening and you want to be better at sales, you want to be a better communicator, all the communication is a transfer of energy. That's it. And you need to understand how that person needs to receive that energy. This is a big thing. Like, I love that you resonate with my content because a lot of people, it's too much for them. The certainty is too high.
Sure.
And so, but like, that's okay for me as far as how I'm branding my Instagram page, but that's not okay for me, like, with my wife or with some employees who are not like that. They get hired and it's like they just get blasted in the face by intensity. And like I used to think that being a great communicator was speaking as clearly as possible in as little words as possible. And whenever I do that, I tend to come off very harsh and like, just fucking do it. Like, not everybody receives that well. So, I had to learn how to really tone some of that shit down. But it's still always been a transfer of energy. That's it. Like, when you want to sell something, you have to create excitement. How do you create excitement? You raise energy up. Emotion is energy in motion, right? And people buy on emotion, right? So if you want that, you have to get some energy in fucking motion.
Right. For sure. I mean, if you sit there and just talk like, hi, Brodie, can I show you a home today? Or like, who's going to resonate with that? You're not even excited about your own product or service, right? Like,
right. And dude, and like, especially, I mean, I'm in a market of 350,000 people maybe.
Okay.
So it's not big, right? And I'm still the 8th realtor to call them today. Like, I can't even imagine what it's like in a huge market, So it's like, you got to fucking stand out. I got to be like, hey, it's Brodie. You know what I'm saying? Like, they gotta hear me.
And they'll feel me. They'll remember you. They might not like it or like you, but they'll definitely remember you because you were different.
Sure. And that's one thing that was important too. So I remember I was a couple months into real estate, and I wanted everybody in town to know who I was. Every big player, I wanted them to know my name. And so I was calling their office all the fucking time, like, yo, it's Brodie Kern, we need to meet. And like, I had some of them I totally pissed off, but they like, but I ended up having this guy who can't like me that much. But I was like dude, the tenacity was just unreal. And like, I really wanted to get a meeting with this guy. And then, so he was here in Springfield, Missouri, where I live. The commercial real estate market is a real like good old boy group. There's like 5 or 6 players and you got to like really get in with them. And so there was this dude, he's like one of the #1 Sperry Van Ness agents in all of the country.
Okay.
And so I finally get a meeting with him and he offers me a job as an apprentice for $35,000 a year. And I'm like, dude, I made 15 last month. Like, there's no way I take that. And he's like, then why are we here? And it was ridiculous. I got him all the way to where he offers me a job and it was like, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out of here. I can't do this. So let's talk about these other businesses that you've kind of ventured into. How did this all come about? What are they? And then how did it all kind of come about?
Yeah, so I'll take you through the timeline quickly, right? Like, did good in real estate, don't love it. I hate the emotion. Then I played ball in the commercial real estate space for a while. You know, I've done like 5 or 6 big commercial deals. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave real estate. And my first sponsor in AA, he was in the call center business. And I was super intrigued by him, what he did. And so I got into brokering call center contracts for a while. So I would find call center contracts, people who needed call center work. And then I would find the manpower in the United States and in the Philippines. And I would then help those people get trained up, manage the relationship, and take my cut in the middle. And I did that for a couple of years, about a year and a half. Did very well there, but my entire life was riding on these two clients. And I was about to get married, and my wife had just gotten pregnant, and these 2 clients were negative as fuck. And I was way overworked. I was out of shape. I was not spiritual at all. My mindset had sucked. I had gotten away from everything that I was ever doing. Right. So I lost myself there for a while, and I was just focused on income generation, and I was doing good at it. Most people do, but like I was totally unhappy, dude. And so I learned a lot about myself because I just said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm out. Walked away. I was about to get married and I just paid taxes. Like I didn't have a lot of money left after the fucking wedding, the taxes, all the shit. No income streams now at this point. I learned a lot about myself there, and I took some time to figure out what I really wanted and what made me happy. And what I ultimately found is that, you know, before I was living I call it a one-dimensional way of life. I was just focused on business. And what it took for me to be happy and achieve still was a 4-dimensional way of life. And that's getting 1% better in mind, body, spirit, and business every day. Those are my 4 areas. And so one thing that I also started doing is I started brokering merchant accounts. So the ability to process credit cards.
Yep.
Yeah. Something that never crosses your world in your business. You luckily never have to deal with a merchant account, but like I'm sure if you've talked with other entrepreneurs, you've heard the nightmares of just like Stripe and shit shutting them down. So then, you know, at that point, real merchant accounts come in. And I'd always I'm just like a referral agent. I had been a referral agent there. Just like I would meet someone, send them to my guy, and I would get a residual. And I had started to build a stream of income there. And then I'm like, okay, I can build a stream of income there. I know how to build streams of income, like middlemanning shit. Like I just love being on the hustle. But I was like,
brokering deals.
Yeah, just brokering deals. Love brokering deals. Do it all the time.
Yeah.
And here's what I'll tell guys listening. There's always money in the conversation if you are well connected and if you are resourceful. Like I will see an opportunity for money in a conversation that people will never see. And it's because I'm so, and here's how I got this way, because whenever I meet someone, I ask a million fucking questions. Like I have no shame. I'll just be like, why, until I understand their entire business and then where I can add value to it. And then I remember. So when I meet someone new, I'm like, wow, they should really know this person.
I love what you said, right? Just finding the opportunity where you can add value, because as my guys know, they heard me say it 1,000 times, is that your income is in direct proportion of the value that you bring.
Yep.
Right? And so
1,000%.
You're always looking for that opportunity. That reticular activator in your brain is always working, looking for that opportunity.
Yeah. It just goes off like a light bulb, right? But then the problem is you actually have to have the balls to execute on it too and be able to execute it. So there's a whole nother thing that comes in. But if you start thinking in that mindset, you'll start seeing the opportunity. Like I'll make money randomly off shit. And it's like, I don't even know how to file out my taxes. You know what I mean? But it's because it's like, I've got an entity, a marketing entity that I just funnel all my weird shit under.
Yeah, what up, man?
I mean,
flip stuff, right? Find the value. I love it.
It's it, dude. But then, so what I did find is whenever I started living this 4-dimensional way of life, dude, I got very fit. Like in the last, so I started December of last year, I couldn't run a mile. And August 16th, I'm running a 50-mile ultra marathon.
Okay.
And so like, and so like, dude, I ended up like meditating every day for a year. My relationship got good. I my whole life exploded. And it was all around this one thing that I call self-mastery. And it's the ability to do what you tell yourself you're going to do. It's discipline, right? Like my entire brand message, all that I care about teaching and talking about at this point is discipline, because it's the thing that everybody needs. But like everybody else is dangling these like attractive carrots in front of people. Like nothing that I talk about is sexy, but it's super fucking real. And that's why I want to talk about that. And then so this 4-dimensional way of life, all the growth that exploded in my life when it happened, I thought it was kind of a fluke, right? And so in this time, I wasn't really working much. So that's when I started putting out content on social media. And so I like had a couple guys pay me. I took 3 coaching clients and I started testing on them. Everything that I had just learned, I'm like, okay, does it work for them? And what I found is that these guys got incredible results as well. Like I was probably spending 75% of the time teaching self-mastery and discipline and the kind of things that I like to talk about, spirituality, the mind, body, spirit of the 4-dimensional way of life. And then maybe 25% of the time talking about business and sales and systems and growth. But their businesses were exploding. And on top of that, they were getting more fit. They were happier. They were quieter, like more quiet between the ears. And then I was like, wow, this is a movement. And I built a program that caused these guys to get so vulnerable. You remember when at the beginning of our podcast, I was talking about how transformation is in the transparency? Well, I built a community of guys where I forced them to fucking get vulnerable with the other brothers in the brotherhood. And so tons of growth happened. And on top of that, everybody gets very close. And so over the last year, we've put 65 guys through our 90-day program. We've put tons more through a couple of our lower ticket offers. But the Wake Up Wealthy Brotherhood is the main focus. That's it. It's, basically all sub 30 male entrepreneurs who, make 6 and 7 figures.
Now, are you guys meeting? Is this community online now? Is it face to face?
Yes. So it's, we're a high ticket coaching company. And so we do twice a week group coaching calls. They have tons of resources, course content that we send them through. We have a very specific set of steps that they follow over the 12 weeks whenever they enter in with us. And then once they're in the brotherhood, and we do in-person events. We have an experiential event that we're planning, and then we do quarterly business planning events, and those are all in person.
You spoke about a word that really resonates with me. You spoke about 1,000 words, so I really get all the value that you've already brought, Brodie, to my viewers and listeners. The word was execution. Why do you think some just never get over that hump, man?
The human condition, there's 2 things. The human condition and the ego does everything that it can to avoid being hurt. Like the human condition is going to cause you to think a lot, way more than you need to. Like the people who execute, they don't really think. Like they just they're like, okay, I'm just going to test, right? Like I hear something, it's interesting. Like my business partner at the coaching company, he will like way overthink shit. And I'm like, I dumb things down so much. My brain doesn't even fucking think about all the shit that could go on. I'm like, just do it. Just go. Like, just try it. And so
I just had one of my team members hand me this sign that we have.
Yes. That's good shit. That's the methodology, because it's like, and then let's talk about the ego, right? Because the ego doesn't want to fail. The ego doesn't want to get hurt. The ego doesn't actually want to show itself. So it will do everything it can to protect itself. And in order to protect itself, it means you can't try something that it's uncertain you will succeed in.
That word ego, right, man? It really fucks with people's brains, right? Like it really stops them, like you said, from doing what they really want to do. I love what you said earlier as well in the podcast. Like share what you're going through. Talk about it. My story is not as tragic as yours, so to speak. But obviously,
but to you, it may be. Yeah. Like it's all relative, right? And so this is I'm nothing special. Sure, I've been through some fucked up shit, but clearly I could tolerate it a little more than most people, right? Yeah. Like whatever you've tolerated in your life is just as bad. Like everybody has their shit, weight loss, fucking, whatever it is, food. Like whatever you've been through, if you're listening, whatever you've been through, we see you, we hear you. It's real. You are right to feel the way that you feel. And now you have to face it to move on.
I have never got into meditation. I've always thought about it. I always probably use the excuse that I just don't have enough time. I know there's hundreds of people that haven't started it out of my network or even thought about it. What has it done for you? I know you mentioned it's given you clarity. How did you get into it? And really, what has it done for you at this point?
So it is something that meditation is something that I was just kind of introduced to through AA. And meditation is something that even 5 minutes a day, if done consistently for 60, 90 days.
You don't need to do it for 60 minutes or like you don't need to go to a meditation yoga resort or something for this.
Three minutes is better than 0 minutes. And that's the thing. And that's where people think that I can't find the time. It's like, bro, you've got 7 minutes in the morning to do a guided meditation. And then So if you want to get into meditation, there's some great apps out there that teach you what to do. Headspace is one. And there's 10 guided meditations. So guided meditations, they'll literally tell you how to breathe, what to think, what to do. And the thing about meditation that is so great is, number one, it builds presence. Meditation teaches one thing though. All that meditation teaches is the ability to focus. Because when you sit down in silence and you close your eyes, if you are not experienced here, the brain is going to start to vibrate. It's like, fuck, we need to be doing something to lunch. What am I eating for lunch? What's the weather like? Am I wearing enough clothes? All this shit comes in. And it's like, fuck, man. And then you've got this voice in this guided meditation being just pay attention to your breath. And I'm like, I just had 4,000 thoughts in, 2 seconds. And so it's once you develop the ability to do so, it creates so much space in your life. It has allowed me the ability to stay calm under pressure. It's allowed me the ability to focus on the now. It's allowed me the ability to really be with my wife and kid at night when I need to shut down and all the shit from work and what I have to do tomorrow is coming in. It has allowed me to be all the things that I want to be.
Love it. I mean, look, the way that we do work, a mile a minute, so to speak, and there's always 4,000 thoughts going on. To kind of slow it down. And I use the analogy of Kobe all the time playing basketball. His game shifted when the game slowed down for him, is when he really went into the realm of being, Hall of Famers, superstars, so to speak, because things weren't moving as fast on the court as they were in the past for him, right?
Yeah, and that's super interesting. I mean, and because, dude, for me too, my entire life now is just doing the hard shit. I'm running this 50 mile race because in December I decided the thing that I hated most in the world was running. And so I've run something like 600 miles this year. I'm 5'11", 200 pounds. I'm not built to run. I got some girth, I'm heavy. And it's and so remember when we were talking about my addiction and I was like, the thing that I am most afraid of, or at that time, was being alone with my own thoughts. Well, dude, meditation's the last thing I should be doing then. You know what I mean? And so I had to conquer that beast.
And even running, if you're running alone, I'm sure the brain's going, right? You're alone with thoughts again, right?
I'll tell you.
You're making yourself do these things.
Dude, I see some shit that I don't want to do or that it's hard, and it's that's my compass. Fear is the compass for everyone. You either run, there's only 2 directions. Away from it or into it. And there's only 2 types of people who run from it and people who charge from it. And, I don't have to describe you the results of each of those types of people. It's pretty fucking self-explanatory.
Brodie, Wake Up Wealthy. Where do my guys find you? Find Wake Up, more information on Wake Up Wealthy. Find more information on you. Give away all the handles, everything, my man. Yeah, dude. Instagram's the hub. It's where I like to be. So if you just go to @Brodie Kern, BRODIEKERN, I'm sure he'll link it here. Everything's there. DM me. I'm sure you'll attest. I do respond. May take me a couple of days, but responsive. I love to connect. I love to give back. I love to be part of the conversation. And dude, I love to hear what's going on with people. You can find links to everything. Wake Up Wealthy. I have a Wake Up Wealthy podcast where
I do interview episodes once a week. And then I also, drop a couple solo episodes between 7 and 15 minutes for people to listen to on their drives. Starting to love that medium. I've got a YouTube. But it all comes from the Instagram, dude. You go there, you can find it all. Link in my bio. There's everything.
Guys, make sure that you look at the bio, the episode description. You'll have every single link that Brodie just spoke about. How many days sober now, my man?
Oh, I stopped counting days a while ago, but we are. So, it was actually just a couple days ago, would have been 4 years, but I had a brief moment there, and we didn't really get into it, but I had a brief moment there where I thought that I could drink again, and I had a short relapse. So we're coming up on 3 years sober.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this. We said 30 minutes. We went for closer to 45 to 50. I hope I was very respectful of your time. You did great. Over. It was okay. Congratulations on the 7-month-old once again. I know how crazy that is. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, Brodie, for sharing as much as you did today, my man.
Yeah, thank you, brother. This was fun.
Awesome.
This has been the REC Experience Podcast with Jas Takhar, an REC Canada production.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the REC Experience. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Click here to watch and experience more videos from REC.